featuring Kevin Gibbon today from Airhouse. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I feel like this story of Airhouse, it must have begun ages back because I've heard of some of the little bits and pieces. Maybe on Twitter, I've heard of some of the transitional pieces. But I'm curious to sort of get the real backstory and like, who are you and what sort of, how did you end up doing? I think it was called Ship, right? Was 2013.
Yep.
And how did you sort of first get involved with that? And then what did you learn through that process? And how do we get to where we are today?
Yeah, so my background, I'm actually Canadian from Vancouver, engineer by trade, so coder growing up, worked for some larger companies, had my first startup in Vancouver as a shopping startup, but it didn't, we had some traction, but it didn't really go anywhere. Went down to San Francisco, loved just the feeling of everybody building stuff, and this was the time where like Uber was like black car only, and Lyft was not even started yet or something.
Kind of 2010 timeframe?
Yeah.
Cool.
No, 2012, I believe.
Okay.
And I knew I wanted to start another company. I just loved it so much, even though I failed my very first company. So I came down here kind of on a whim and worked for another company. I was an engineer, I was an iOS developer. My friend's company, who actually he then later fired me. We're still good friends today, and I actually hired him later on. And because I actually, when I was working at his company, I started building Ship. And it really, the reason that I started building that, so that's my previous company to Airhouse, it was really to solve a personal pain point that I had as myself. So I've always been very entrepreneurial in my life, and it was a pain point. I was an eBay power seller, and it was just really tough to get stuff to your customers. And so we created Ship. What Ship was, it was a really amazing consumer shipping application, mobile based. Take a picture of whatever you wanted to ship, unpackaged if you wish. We would come to you. We were actually on demand. We were riding the waves of kind of the on demand economy and everything. So we would come within like 20 minutes, and it was really a magical experience. And from there, to make that really work, it was a lot of logistics. So we actually had to set up our own warehouse. We did everything initially ourselves, but we eventually were in like 10,000 square foot warehouse, and we developed all the software ourselves. And from the warehouse management system, which is kind of like routing all the stuff inside a warehouse, to the courier routing system. So this was before really anything was available from other companies. Like Uber had to create their own. The DoorDash as well was creating their own. And then we also had to have the front end like experience, and it was mobile first. We then had a web version, and it was a really amazing experience for consumers. We had an amazing fit. Unfortunately, consumer shipping market is quite small in the scheme of things. And we had a lot of extra overhead versus a typical like marketplace tech only startup like an Uber or DoorDash. We had facilities, we had labor, we had to manage, we had to get to a certain volume point to break even in a market. And the consumers, while we had an amazing fit with them, and we expanded market by market. So at the time, at the height, we were in 5 markets. In the US, we had, over 300 employees, and we had an amazing fit with consumers, but we'd have quick adoption and growth with the consumers, and then there's just not that many people, like on average, like maybe like 2 to 4 times a year they'll ship something. And so we had amazing word of mouth growth, was able to raise a lot of capital on that. And the plan was always to go up market. Unfortunately, we didn't really have a product that was like suitable enough. SMBs, we had a pretty good fit. SMBs are hard to make work to acquire them. They're very expensive, and they tend to not. They weren't really worth a lot of us because we had so much overhead. And through that journey, I guess it was 5 or 6 years. It unfortunately did not work out. So we tried everything we could. We went through a couple of different pivots. Even one we didn't actually launch publicly, but something was really working. And it kind of led me into building Airhouse with my co-founder, Sarah, who was at Ship before.
How did you decide, I think a lot of these entrepreneurial stories have a lot of twists and turns and there's ups and downs. And, I wonder, it sounds like you went through a few pivots and eventually decided to shut it down. I wonder, sort of, can you take us through your mind, maybe at one or two of those pivots and maybe at the final shutdown? Was it obvious to you when that happened that was the right call, or was it like highly contentious and you had to discuss and debate it a lot? Help us understand a little bit about like what that feels like.
Yeah, so the major pivots to stand out in my mind, I'd say like more business pivots. So we were able to raise quite a bit of capital, and we prematurely scaled the business. And also the expectation when you raise big dollars, like you need to spend it. So we were spending way too much money. We were working on products that actually they were really cool, but they didn't actually equate to either more profits or more growth. So those were definitely mistakes looking back at it. One of the big pivots we had, the market really did shift, and it wasn't like. There were quite a few other startups that had facilities and they also had technology, and that was okay. You could raise money on that. And then the market kind of shifted to where it's like, no, these are not venture backable, scalable businesses because they take so much capital to get started and scale. And you don't really see the same returns, and it just takes so long. So the first major business pivot was to focus on getting profitable. And so we focused a lot on operations, getting more efficient on the routing, which the labor to go pick up something was very expensive. Same thing for in the warehouse. How do you get that more efficient? And we actually were able to do that and we eventually did prove out San Francisco as being operationally profitable. And so that was a success. But unfortunately, we needed a lot more than that. Like when we took on the venture dollars that we took on, expectations were super high. Even internally, even with employees, you see employees starting to leave. They see the writings on the wall. I think that's one of the biggest indicators that your company's not working when some of your best talent starts leaving. But we were able to make the business prove that it worked. But then we weren't focused a lot more on growth or new products and stuff like that. And so that was good, but that was a really hard one. We had to do layoffs as well. So we did two rounds of major layoffs, which it's so hard to do that. But we had to do that. And then the second pivot, and that was really towards the end. It was really a skeleton crew. I think we had, 13, 15 people. I know we had like $5 million left in the bank. And we were going to build a product for these larger businesses. So we built the consumer product, and then we built the web-based, and that was more for SMBs, and we had an okay fit there. And then this next product, which definitely was a major pivot, it was a pivot towards more higher value, higher volume customers, because how we made our money was on a transaction basis. So you get a brand that's doing 1,000 or tens of thousands potentially of units per month versus the smaller people. So we were building that, and it was really working. So we actually didn't go public with a lot of this stuff. This is kind of an internal pivot that we did. And we had tons of brands that were wanting to do it. But we still had a lot of the kind of baggage from what we built. So we shut down all of the other cities, got SF operational profitable, and then we started to store these brands' inventory. So we were, if anybody knows what a 3PL is, a third-party logistics company, you send your inventory over to a warehouse, and then as it sells, you'll pick, pack, and ship it. And so that's essentially what we were. So we were a modernized version of that. And that was really working. We were getting customers, and it really, honestly, it came down to like the final week of like looking at our liabilities and like to be able to give some people some sort of severance and everything. Like I was trying to raise money. We only needed another like $5 million to continue with the more efficient crew that we had to continue this momentum that we had. But unfortunately, we had some interest, but it's really like, okay, we raised a total amount of $63 million, had some of the best venture capital investors like on our board. And it's like, even though this is kind of working, and the growth is really, really good, like if we were to start this over again, it would look fantastic. It's kind of like you just have all of this baggage, even emotionally, and it was just we couldn't get that lead investor to lead that last round. We had existing investors that would participate, but not willing to lead it, which also I think is a pretty big signaling issue. And also I can't blame them either, because they've in their eyes, like the venture model is you're looking for that one out of 10 outlier. Yep. So this is clear, like just thinking about if this is actually going to work after all these years.
How was your energy level? Did you want to push, or were you kind of like done with it?
I was push the entire way through. And I think that I eventually, after we shut down the company, that emotionally caught up to me. Yeah. But I was always like, there's got to be a way. We know we could solve this. We had an amazing team all along the journey. And things also, like everything that we set our minds to and said we were going to do, we did. So I was very confident in the execution of the company throughout everything. Unfortunately, like what we just focused on the wrong things, like just looking back at it. So it was to that very last minute. I think it was like that last meeting with an investor that was potentially going to lead, and and then we're like, we have to shut down the company to be able to pay off our suppliers and pay our lease and like give people severance. And that's also that's not a fun process either. But there was no other options, so we had to shut it down.
Right.
Yeah. What was it like right after you made that decision? Like, the company was shut down. It was just you. What was going through your mind? Like, kind of, what did you do in that time between when you shut ship down and started Airhouse?
There was 0 days between.
Really?
Is that right? Wow. Straight into it.
Wow. Yeah, because the thing, like, so as we were shutting ship down, like that definitely takes some time too. So like, it was probably like a month or 2 months or something that it was just solely focused on that. And at the same time, I'm like, there's something here. Like there's really a really big need. We hadn't even like launched anything publicly, and we're already getting all of these. These were all of these direct-to-consumer brands that were looking for a better solution that was out there. And it's like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So myself and my co-founder, Sarah, so she's amazing on the B2B sales and marketing side of things. And I'm definitely more on obviously the fundraising stuff, but also on the product engineering, and also from just the ship experience, the operations side of things. I definitely learned a ton there. So we were a really good match. We're like, there's got to be something here. And also, like, we had a lot of investors. Like, I was pretty like as honest as I could be throughout the process and everything. Yeah. And a lot of investors saw that, like, I didn't give up. Like, it was just like to the very end. And then we had a lot of support to go and try to start something else. So looking back at it, should I have taken a break? Yeah, I should have, but I didn't. Because I wanted to get back at it as fast as I could.
And when was that? Was that transition from Ship to Airhouse a couple years back now?
Yeah, it was about 2.5 years. Yeah, that's when we actually, it was just me and Sarah initially. We founded the company. Yeah, it was right after I was done with everything for Ship.
And it sounds like you sort of had a lot of conviction around what you wanted to do with Airhouse. So probably given all that experience you had and conviction that you sort of had formed, I wonder, in that last 2.5 years, has it been more execute on that vision, or have you sort of had kind of other surprises along the way that have sort of shaped what Airhouse is today?
Oh, so many different learnings. That's the journey of a startup, right? You have an inkling of what a customer will want, or how the market changes, or what other people are doing, and you need to adapt to it. So we started out with the problem, which is, I think that you definitely need to start out the problem in the market. And so the problem was there's a ton of these direct to consumer brands that are starting up. They are unique, and people are buying from them for their products and or marketing. That's really where their differentiator is versus you going to Amazon and buying from Amazon and just a commodity product. So these people didn't tend to know operations, and also they tended to be able to manufacture their goods at a very small scale. So think of even like 3D printers, or there's a lot of smaller manufacturers domestically that you could get. If you're an apparel company, you could get something in a very small batch, and then to scale it up, you don't need to do it yourself. You go internationally for electronics. Like China, obviously, is amazing. A lot of other countries are amazing at different verticals, but that's really been it's not a solved problem because it's still hard, but that as far as in these brands, these entrepreneurs' minds, that's more of a solved problem. And then you have what they had to do before was on the engineering side. It's like I had to create my own website, and then it's like, oh, it's Shopify, it's amazing. Yep. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't even have to have an engineering team. And then we just saw that the really big missing piece was once you sold your product, how do you get to your actual customers? And you had to work with this very antiquated industry, this 3PL industry, and it really you would have to hire either an ops consultant, you'd have to hire an operations manager, you'd have to hire somebody within your company that had operational experience to then go run a process with 20 or 30 of these different 3PLs. So just give you a sense of what the actual market is. There's like 10,000 of these 3PLs in the US alone. It doesn't seem like it's that big of a market, but it is, and it's really hard to know who to work with. And so you'll run a process with 20 to 30 3PLs. It could take up to 6 months to start talking to somebody till you actually get your inventory with them. There could be an installation process, even with the Shopify, if you're using Shopify for your sales channel. So we're like, there's just got to be a different way. I look at it very similar to like a Stripe. Like before Stripe, could you take payments on the internet? Yeah, you could. Like there were so many online businesses. But what they did is they took a process that took 4 to 5 weeks, a process that you had to go to a bank and have some sort of credibility, and then you'd have to have some engineers to actually code that up into probably some pretty funky APIs that these banks would offer. They made that a really amazing experience, and then they created an amazing brand around that. And we're just like, why doesn't this exist for the 3PL industry or the operations industry? So that's what we started with, was just like the problem and the opportunity as well. Like it's just, I think that and also just my personal drive. Like I want to build something that is venture scale. Like I really want to have a really big impact for customers. So thinking about the size of the market and also just how it's still growing so quickly. So this is like 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago. And look at where Shopify, a good proxy would be look at how big Shopify is now to where they were then, and they're still growing even more, especially since COVID now. So it's just like there should be an actual solution here to use the logistical excellence of a 3PL out there, but then not have to have custom installations or have to talk to maybe some older school operations salespeople, or have to have a lot of this operational knowledge within your company. So that's why we started Airhouse.
Right. And so just to make sure, because I think I'm certainly no expert at 3PL, I've heard the term thrown around a bunch, but is this the warehouse, you accept the stuff, you ship it out, and you're kind of that whole operations piece?
Yeah.
Is that kind of the core of it? Okay.
Yeah.
And then I think Amazon has some sort of, anything in commerce, we should at least try to understand the Amazon side of it. So I think they have some sort of service where they do this, but I think some retailers are uncomfortable using Amazon in that capacity. Is that accurate?
Yeah, there's a lot of competitors. So as I mentioned, there's 10,000 3PLs you could go to directly. There's also Amazon has a service, FBA. But still, it's really not easy to know who to go with. Amazon doesn't work for a lot of direct-to-consumer brands. And they're really amazing if you are going to sell on the Amazon platform, but they have a lot of limitations, like if you want to use your own custom packaging, like you can't. So like that's like that. Besides, they'll have all your data and know where you're selling to and everything, and a lot of things that are going on with people afraid to work with Amazon. That alone is like kind of a showstopper. And so there really wasn't, and there still isn't, frankly, obviously super biased of what we're building and we built. A real good way for like a modern brand that doesn't have operational knowledge. Like even if you were to go use FBA, you would have to hire somebody who would know how to use FBA. It's not as easy as like an entrepreneur themselves that didn't have any experience. They couldn't go and use it, for example. And so what we've tried to do is differentiate ourselves to make it super easy. Make sure that you're getting. So we actually don't have the warehouses. We're pure technology. We partner with the best in class 3PLs.
Cool.
And so we have deep partnerships with them. And then we have amazing technology, super easy onboarding, straightforward pricing, all the things that you wish that, and also customization for these brands. So are you selling wholesale? Like that's another thing. Like, are you selling into like a Shopbop, who's like an online marketplace? They have different receiving guidelines that like some 3PLs can't handle. Are you a food company? Are you a beverage company? Do you need refrigeration? Where is your manufacturer located? Like what locations actually make sense for you around the US and eventually for us internationally? And so we look to work either directly with the entrepreneur when they're just looking to start outsourcing their fulfillment, or we'll also work directly with an ops team and just give them more leverage through our technology and through our vetted network as well. That's really important. We're building this two-sided marketplace, and we know how high quality one warehouse is versus everybody else because we already have customers. And it comes down to what type of product. So an apparel company will have like 2,000 or 3,000 different SKUs because all the sizes of inventory and everything. Like which 3PLs perform best for that. They also have returns. There's a lot of different variables that go into it. So our goal is really to just take all the guesswork out of that for the brands, and then allow them to focus on what's most important, which is their product and why it's different, and then how do they get more customers.
Right. So is it fair to kind of think about it like a virtual 3PL network, kind of on top of everybody else's infrastructure? So you kind of find the best stuff and find the right requirements that fit the needs, and you're kind of the software layer that virtualizes all of that.
Yes, totally.
That's awesome. And you mentioned Shopify a few times. So would a Shopify merchant be kind of a typical kind of customer, or do they have separate solutions that they typically use, or how does that ecosystem work?
Yeah. The majority of our customers today are Shopify, and I think that goes for most modern brands. They'll be using Shopify, but we also will work with really any sales channel that you have. We have customers that use our API and these customers fall into, and why wouldn't you use Shopify? Or also there's now two other public companies that compete with Shopify. So there's BigCommerce, and then as of today, I think Squarespace went public.
Cool.
So there are other competing platforms other than Shopify, but some people actually just even choose to create their own website still. So a company like a Peloton, for example, where they have like a subscription model for the digital services, and also they sell their actual physical inventory. They chose to go the custom route, even though they're a newer brand. So there's a lot of different reasons people use a lot of different stuff. So what our goal is to work wherever you sell your stuff, to get your data all into one place, to get your inventory data all into one place, and really be the in-between layer between all of your sales and customers and the 3PLs that you use. And to be able to work with you as a very small company and then scale with you as well. So you might start, as you get larger, wanting to utilize multiple locations to locate your stuff closer to your customers to save time and also money. Also on the wholesale side, there's a lot of data requirements that a lot of these wholesalers have. So if you're selling to Macy's or REI or any online marketplace, we'll be able to work with you and help. So you wouldn't have to build that. You still actually have some of these brands still have like Allbirds, for example. I think like they have a huge engineering team. It's like, why is that? A lot of it's around the operations side. So we really want to internalize that and then offer it as a service to all the brands.
Right. Do people do, I know the phenomenon of like sales from social media is a big one these days. And I wonder, is there a day when you don't need a super heavy shopping cart kind of website system and you're just kind of selling on Instagram and then fulfilling through Airhouse? Is that, are we kind of close to that, or is that a little far off still? Or
yeah, totally. I think so. There's Instagram, there's Facebook. I know is doing a lot on the commerce area. There's TikTok is a great example as well. Right now, all of these platforms are typically utilizing like a Shopify. But the way that we're built is that we will be able to work with wherever you're selling. So it doesn't have to be within just the Shopify ecosystem. And who knows what's going to hold in stores. If you look at what's happened on the sales channel side, like there's been a lot of large companies. So a good example is like Magento. So they've been bought and sold a few times, but they're actually still a big percentage of the volume of these larger retailers. And now they're not in favor. People aren't going in. Like a new brand would not use Magento, for example. So we're really designed to work with wherever you're going to sell today and also in the future.
Right. And do you start you mentioned the kind of Stripe for logistics analogy is I think what you mentioned. So I think a lot of maybe if we think about the playbook, there is a lot of like enable people who are really early in their kind of business. And then as your customers or partners grow, your volume grows and then lets you sort of move up level to sort of existing larger players. So is that already are you somewhere along that path, and are you starting to get interest in discussions with larger players? Are you still sort of like on kind of the groundwork of getting a lot of the kind of early ones and waiting for a few of your early customers to pop?
Yeah, that was the strategy definitely from the beginning. Is let's work with the brands that are looking to outsource their operations to a 3PL, and then work to build to work up market. We've actually seen that we've been able to go up market a lot faster than we thought, and so now we're moving people away from their current 3PL solutions. So the 3PL market is really interesting. There's really massive switching costs because it could take up to 6 months to get onboarded. It's a whole process. They have your physical inventory, so people are not that likely to switch. And so what that gives the more like the poor performing 3PLs is kind of an okay not to treat their customers that well, not like orders are late or not going out or things are not, like the packaging requirements are not being followed very carefully. And so if you talk to like a scale brand, they probably would have went through 5 or 6 different 3PLs in their life cycle. So we're now at a point where we're not just going to the ones that are just looking to outsource. We're now going and moving people away from their current 3PL solutions. And where I think that we're going to really sit is going to be mid-market. So I say that we're really well suited to somebody doing about $20 million in annualized sales a year, and below that as well, obviously. And then we'll work to scale with our customers, which is what you kind of asked. You nailed there, and also to move up market. So we're able to move the $50 million, the $100 million customer over to our platform, because at that point, the real big factor is people would want to use something like us is for our vetted network of 3PLs. So early days, it was actually really, really hard to get quality 3PLs ourselves because we're doing the same process. We're trying to figure out who's going to be good, who's not going to be good, and then actually how we solved the chicken and egg problem initially was we just bought a very small direct-to-consumer brand ourselves. It was a sunglass company, and we just pretended we were a customer. And then we started adding more and more products to like our account.
Right.
And then we had enough customers, then we would get another 3PL. But early days, like I think that we probably churned through, I don't know, like 10 different 3PLs. So that's a really big value proposition for somebody that is even like they've got it, it's working, they have an operations team, everything. It's like this vetted network that we know at your scale, your type of product, that this is going to work for you. And then also on the software side of things. So we're building a lot of things that go deeper into like a Shopify. So to help with like, think of the options that you have on a Shopify, the shipping options that you have on a checkout page. So that is really up to like, how do you match that with a 3PL? That doesn't exist. Like we could do that. Having a really nice integrated returns experience flow, we'll do that as well. It's really looking at either tools that people are having to go and use themselves and pay extra for, or they're building internally to make this kind of 3PL to usually Shopify, but it could be anywhere, really work. We're building all those things. So that's a way that we'll be able to move up market and grab a lot of these other brands because it's just an integrated solution for them.
And when you think about like those transitions, like you mentioned different things you're doing to better enable moving up market, for example, what's it like inside the company? Like what's your process like when you're thinking about, okay, this is a goal that we'd like to achieve. What exactly should we do? Like who's around the table and how do you think about those decisions? And is that pretty similar to the Ship days or does that feel like a different process entirely?
So yeah, taking a lot of learning. So at Ship, we scaled way too fast. And we weren't able to get the right foundation to scale off of. So we're still at the stage where it is a little chaotic and it's not quite clear who is even making a lot of the decisions a lot of the time, but that's by design. So we really want to enable people to really like when they find the problem, they're going to go and solve it versus having like exec teams and like we don't even have frankly a formal board. Which I think just allows us to move a lot faster and then build the right foundation that we're able to scale. But what we have, obviously the goals of the company are really like landing customers, growth, and moving up market. And I think the hardest thing, and I think this goes for most marketplace startups, is the quality on the supply side. So either like the liquidity on the supply side, and also for us, it was quality. And so, like looking back now, I would have wished that we could have moved a lot faster. But I knew that the winner in this market, or the one of the winners, is going to have this really high quality network of 3PLs that just work. And that takes a lot of time. So it takes about like 4 months for us to understand if the 3PL actually meets our requirements. We try to do things like early on, like I know like myself, like building like this, we did a Ship, like we built all the operations and understanding how warehouses work and all these things. So early days I would visit the 3PLs and try to understand if like, oh, like what like, are they sophisticated enough? What warehouse management system are they using? Do they seem like they have like legitimate brands and all those things? And I thought that would be good enough to be able to suss out the quality. That turns out not to be the case. And it really comes down to the individual management within an actual single warehouse. And the only real way that and this is what we're going off of right now, is to know if a warehouse 3PL is high quality is actually just giving them a lot of volume. So are they getting out? And this we're continuously monitoring the health of each individual 3PL. Like, are things going out on time? Are they receiving items on time as well? So think of you sending stuff from your manufacturer. That's huge for a brand. In a brand like the cycle time for your inventory is so important because your biggest expense is your inventory, and you have a negative cash flow cycle. You're paying for your inventory before you sell it. So that turn time to get stuff to be able to sell it is really important. And a lot of these warehouses, like, they just weren't that good at it. So now the only way that we really can know, it actually kind of benefits us to be in this position because we could do this on behalf of all of our brands. But there's no real other way to know if somebody's good or not. Just giving them orders and volume, seeing if they are a good fit or not.
Yeah.
So do you continue then to grow the sunglasses brand that Bootstrap did as a way
no.
That was just a starting point. When you say you give them volume, you're actually giving them real customer volume.
Yeah.
You're kind of trialing them.
Yeah.
And I guess like as a virtualization layer, do you have? You mentioned sort of the traditional stickiness of 3PL and how it's sort of hard to switch providers. But as a virtualization layer, presumably you have some easier ability to load balance. So is that a core thing that lets you sort of load balance a little bit of volume over here, see how it performs, and if it's good, do more, and if it's not so good, kind of transition over? Is that a major feature, that kind of load balancing function?
Yeah, totally. And that could be for a number of different reasons. So one, just growth of a brand. So some warehouses can't actually handle like the 300 to 400 to 500% year over year growth. So you'll want to move them to another facility that can. Other ones would be to different product lines, for example. So what's a good example? If you're going to add something that's somewhat perishable, or like makeup, for example, that needs to be in like a temperature controlled facility, like that may just be another product that you've added that the existing 3PL that we had you in doesn't actually support it. Or a different, you're working with a different manufacturer on a different side of the world that you're wanting to utilize a different coast. So there's a lot of different reasons that you'll work with different, and we'll move your inventory around. But early days, we cut our teeth with actual customers like that were not satisfied, and we had to do the best that we could to. For one, we would take care of any costs that were associated with moving their inventory over to somebody else, and just going above and beyond. And early on, we did lose some customers because they associated our service to the service they were getting at 3PL, and I don't blame them. And so that was one of the difficulties in starting this. But now we're at a really good place where we have enough like high quality supply for like our growth targets for the next year that we're in a really good place. But we still do, as we will always continuously be onboarding more supply side, and we still do have to continuously test on a warehouse by warehouse basis. So you'll even have some of these 3PLs that we work with now. We're kind of in the mid-market range for 3PLs as well. They'll have like a few locations or a dozen locations around the U.S. And we found that even in the parent 3PL, if they're good, it really comes down to the individual management on the ground. If people are getting stuff out on time, well, staffing's a big one as well. Like when you're dealing with brands that will have a big marketing push or something, and their volume is growing, like maybe it's like 300% week over week or something. You're having to staff bodies, and so how good is a warehouse manager at getting temp labor or scaling up?
And you're sort of sitting in between those. So are you hearing about the upcoming campaign from the direct consumer brand, and then you're communicating that to the 3PLs that you intend to use?
Yep. Or if we want to use a different 3PL for a specific like marketing campaign or something, we'll do that too. It really depends on the needs of the customer. But yeah, it's really, and this is going, I think, to one of your initial questions about this. Did I envision all of these things happening? No, I didn't. It started with a problem, and now it's like the customization piece. And to be able to work with so many different providers is such a huge benefit for a brand that they would have had to go and do themselves, and trial and error. And that's like just wasted time that they could have been spending on their product and their customers.
Right. Makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like, wow, so many learnings probably for
so many.
Second
continuously learning.
Yeah, totally. Is there anything like recently that basically like since starting Airhouse, you talked about some lessons from like ship days till now, but what's been sort of like the most recent kind of lesson or realization just like operating Airhouse itself?
I think that, I think prematurely scaling is a huge lesson that I've taken from Ship, and that is very hard to do. I catch myself looking at, like, especially a lot of these other industries, like, for example, like crypto, or what's the latest thing, NFTs, or like all of these like different markets that are just like growing, or companies that are raising and like every 3 months, and they're 5x in their valuation, and have to continuously remind myself, like, that's not the way to build. Like, I've been there before, I've done that, I've got caught up in that. So that's definitely like a lesson that we've done pretty well. So we've actually done, like, instead of raising quite a bit of money, we've kind of raised in different tranches based on what we've needed, and kept the team as small as possible. And really, when the only time we'll really expand it is when things start really breaking, and that can be uncomfortable. But also, we've tried to hire a lot of people who are more like entrepreneurial, and they're either wanting to start a company eventually one day, or they're just willing to do anything, and also focusing on that core set of people, because I've seen this. I think at Ship we did a fairly good job of this, but really reinforced it. The first 10 plus people you have that's going to be the culture. That's going to set it. Like, creating values and all this other like stuff that people say, that comes after the fact. That's not, you don't do that early on. You don't set up this like thing and this deck. This is the way the company's going to be. It's just based on the people. So we've just like continuously focused on hiring amazing people, and also listen. So we bring people in when we're hiring somebody, and I'll be thinking, I'm like, this person's like is going to be a good fit. But listening to the people around, other people that around the table, and like, we've not gone with certain people because it doesn't fit our culture that we've created, or something that I've missed, or my Sarah's missed, and I think that's a scalable way. Thinking about like the next step and the next stages. So really focusing on people has been a really big learning. I think
you mentioned culture. I wonder if I could pause on that one for a second.
Sure.
Are there aspects of culture that have kind of organically emerged? And actually, I know you have a stop at 12:45, so I want to be sensitive to the time.
Oh yeah, I can go to past. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. But speaking of kind of culture, are there if somebody were to just be dropped into Airhouse today, are there certain characteristics that would be familiar to anybody who's inside Airhouse that might not be obvious to people outside? And do those vary from sort of what it felt like at Ship?
I think that things that stand out, I think autonomy is a really big one. Allowing people to make the decisions that they need to make without, like myself, I'm not a micromanager at all, never have been. Some people thrive in that environment. Those are the people that I want to surround myself with. Some people that actually is not good. So back from Ship, I would say that and usually as you scale a company, you have to get people that are more like focused on this specific thing, and they're really good at that. I'm not that. I can't manage those people. I need people that it's like very high level. And really just give them like, what do you need? Like, what are the things? Do we need to hire more people? Do we need to get this piece of technology? Do we need to prioritize this thing? I think that's pretty unique from a lot of the other companies that I've seen, where it's very much like a few amount of people are making all of the decisions. So we've really like tried to push that out into everybody, to the customer success team or wherever. And I think that is a way that you can scale a company to be able to make its own decisions as well, and really just going back to focus on like the customers. That's the most important thing. I think that is unique for us. A lot of companies say that they do, but they're focused on competitors, or they're focused on raising that next round and all those things. And I've definitely fallen into the trap. At Ship, we hired some people that they would focus a lot on that, and that's not how you build a really meaningful company. You need to just focus on the customers, and if you're not ready to like take on additional capital or raise more people, and you need to stick it out like a little longer, which has actually been frustrating piece for me as I want to go faster. But if it's not the right time for the company to do those things, you really shouldn't do that. And so we just continuously focus on that. I think those are like the things that really stand out. I think other things, people are very, we work really well together, very collaborative. But a lot of people say that too, but I think that's definitely different. It actually is true here. And I think those are, yeah. Oh, and also, and it's something that I wanted to try to keep, and this is what we actually look for when we hire people that are really very curious and they're willing to go deep into maybe a new area that they had no experience in before, and that are not just hired on to do this one thing. That's been really, really important, and that's enabled us to continuously listen to our customers, versus the other way, thinking that you know what the solution should be or what this one person should be doing, and then if you sold them on that and then that changes, that that's not a good thing for either you as the employer or the employee. So really, just giving people the freedom to go and just kind of go deep on a lot of different things and let it follow them to wherever that is, but then kind of bring it back to what the core focus for the company's goals are.
Yeah, I'm struck by how there's clearly been a lot of introspection and reflection and learning from your own experiences and mistakes at the last company and this company. And I'm also curious about whether do you approach your learning as a founder in any sort of structured way outside of that? Are there resources you tap into a lot, or are there mentors or friends or other founders that you found their journeys particularly instructive for your own learning? How do you think about your own development in that sense?
Yeah, I try to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me in different areas. And my professional network, I've worked hard to build that up over time, and with people that are doing much different things or similar things than me, run ideas past them, see how they are doing things, and then try to kind of put my own spin on whatever that is. Other resources, I'd say that's the biggest one that I use. I'm not in I, of course, read kind of the typical books. I'm not a huge book reader. I think that the way that I learn the best, honestly, is from just kind of doing it and figuring out what works the best, and kind of trial and error, which sometimes lead you to some pain, but that's the best way that I definitely do learn. But other than that, yeah, nothing very specific.
That makes sense. And in terms of the people networks that you talked about, has there been was there a particular moment in your life where you felt a big unlock, where you found a lot of those people at once around a particular moment or group, or has it been kind of just slowly built up over time? How have you thought about kind of building up that robust group of people?
Slowly built up over time. And also you need to put in the work. So I definitely, I'll have a few different groups of people, friends, but also professional friends, that I'll actually try to coordinate with them. So I'll be the person trying to get people together or something like that. I think you definitely need to put in the time. And there's a lot of people that don't, they're super smart, but they don't actually put in the work to make that happen. And I'm kind of the opposite. I've seen the benefits, but it has been kind of a built up over time. And these are relationships that you're talking about. So it definitely takes some time. But also, if you're looking for pointed solutions, just reaching out to your network or your investors. I utilize our investor updates. That's actually a good learning that I have as well. I utilize investors a lot more, and I built a much larger investor base up this time around, because I really saw the value that they can provide. So I spend a lot of time on my investor updates and what we're really looking at, and ask specific questions about who can connect us with this or whatever, and really utilize that. Where before it was much more, I would just kind of share very limited amounts of information and just like operate the company from internally. And also back then, I like my younger self, I thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. So I feel like I don't need your help, but that's definitely changed because I've just seen, and it's kind of random too. You don't know who the people are going to be able to provide the most help for you. And that's why I've had such a large investor group. We've done AngelList syndicates. I think we've done a few of them with Airhouse, different leads, and it's really surprising. Some people that maybe just put like a couple $1,000 into the company, and how helpful they could be in whatever area you're looking for. So I think that's been something that I want to continue with. And everybody has their own motivations. So, and also on the other side, like having like John Doerr was on my board, and he obviously he was on the board and first investors in like Google and Amazon and amazing companies, and those people are all awesome, especially for connections. Those people are like the best, but they don't have the hunger that a lot of these maybe early-ish investors are. So the people that have just started writing, or they're maybe investing like 20 grand in like a handful of companies and AngelList syndicates, they want to become an investor. That they have to prove themselves, and so they'll do a lot of the hard work to help you. So I think that it's kind of really been random, and I've kind of just taken kind of a spray and pray approach. From investors, but then keep them updated and ask very specific pointed questions on how they could be helpful. So that's definitely.
And when you think about those updates, are there certain formats that you've been inspired by, or certain things that you find work really well? Like I've seen sometimes people lead with an ask and then give sort of the kind of the metrics updates and talk about team. But are there certain kind of key elements or characteristics that you find work best?
No, I think that like I've tried to keep them short. I think like put yourself in an investor's shoes. They have a lot of these, especially early investors. They could be investors in 50 companies. Keep them short. Really nail on the important things. Be super honest. Like tell them the things that are going wrong, just as well as the other things that are going right. Metrics wise, I think be very specific on the metrics, the most important metrics, and do not overwhelm people with a lot of that. A lot of metrics, people just go crazy, especially early stage. It's like these metrics are not like you're looking at like time on, I don't know, like even conversion rates on a landing page. Like this is a waste of time. It's like, what is your product? How does like, are you landing customers? Like just like the basic, are customers staying with you? Like just, you don't need a lot of like metrics. So just keeping everybody really focused in on the most important things, and also your asks as well. I try to also, because like I'm in like the logistics space, so I try to share just like a lot of like news that is happening around the e-commerce logistics space and put my spin on it. So maybe I give investors a reason to read the entire update. So it's kind of a two-way street that I'll ask for something and maybe I'll be able to teach somebody something else. But yeah, being more open and more communicative with investors has definitely been a change for me.
Do you communicate around, one thing I've seen some companies do that I think works well is when they have a really important hire, which can be, almost everybody in the early stages, they actually send out to the investor group to see if anybody can explain their excitement around the company. I don't know if that's something that you've tried before or you found effective.
That's cool.
No, it's never effective. Using investors for hiring has never been effective for me. For closing, yes.
That's what I mean, yeah. Yeah, for closing. Yeah, so basically we found this person, we made an offer and we love them. Can you tell them why you're excited about this company?
Yes. And that's where if you can get somebody that is a heavy hitter on and to tell them why they invest in the company, that is absolutely something that investors can be really, really great at. But as far as sourcing hires,
good luck.
even senior people, it's really has not been that helpful.
Right. if you were, I know we're actually close to the hour, and we hard stop there. So, we will transition to wrap quickly, but just one thing we like to wrap with before we actually end is kind of open-ended, understanding a little bit more about you and kind of what's top of mind for you these days. What are you curious about? Could be Airhouse related, but also could be stuff you're seeing in the world, books you're reading, or I guess you're saying you're not as much in the books, but maybe there's stuff you've seen on Twitter, or are there any kind of questions or topics of interest or things that sort of are grabbing your attention? What are you curious about these days?
Yeah, crypto actually, and not for the reason that you think. So I'm not a crypto person. I don't actually see the value in it as much as some other people do. So trying to understand the reason that it's gotten so much hype and even just thinking about Bitcoin specifically, how do you get these people that are just like so diehard, like invested, like monetarily, but also just like emotionally invested in this thing that is real? It's like, in my opinion, it's a speculative asset, and it's not really innovative at all outside of just like it's cool tech, which it definitely is, but does it really solve any problem? No, it doesn't. So just trying to understand why people, and some of the smartest people out there that are going all in on this. And all I can come back with is just that they understood that there's just going to be a lot of people that they can get excited, that they'll be able to make a lot of money on. But that's just a more recent, very curious thing that I have been thinking about.
Yeah, cool. It's definitely a popular topic in the world, and a lot
also
of
NFTs, like why do they exist?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, very, very cool. Well, it's an area I'm actually very passionate about. So if you ever want to come back and talk about Bitcoin, I'm happy to share.
I just want to learn. Like I'll be like, I don't fully understand it, but maybe I'm missing something. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think some of it is like this, replacement of religion in kind of more secular society.
Yes.
People want something to believe in. I think sometimes, I think certainly some people are attracted by the economic, value growth, but, or let's say financial value growth, maybe rather than economic, but yeah, it's a religion. It's something to believe in a world that might otherwise be becoming more secular in certain areas. So anyway, that's a cool topic. We don't have time to get into all the details of it, but I love to hear that you're curious about it.
I'm very curious. Very curious.
I still call myself a Bitcoin student. I'm not a teacher, just a student, but it's something I do find super interesting. So, all right. Well, I guess next time we can do a Bitcoin jam. But
I love it.
Thanks, Kevin, for spending the time with us. Super interesting to hear kind of your whole background, and I love it when we get kind of the real story across like a longitudinal process and the twists and turns and what was on your mind at each moment. I feel like that really came through in our discussion today.
Awesome.
Thanks for spending the time.
Yeah, thanks so much. This is a lot of fun.
Cool. All right. See ya.
Yeah.
Yep. See ya.